Where have you been coming from? How are you feeling? Anything that you would like to check in with on the chat box.
Vinay, you're introducing the Vikalp Varta thing, no? Yeah, okay.
Yes, Ashish.
स्वास टाइम कॉफी टाइम चीयर्स कुछ भेज भी दीजिए.
All right. Uh, we've had good sharings from a lot of us. People are having coffee. Some are just coming together. A lot of us, lot are curious about the young minds. Great. So we'll start with today's session. What I'll do is I'll just start. I'll share a screen. Uh, start sharing my presentation. Okay. So, again, welcoming you all to the 10th Vikalp Varta organized by Vikalp Sangha. In this Varta, we have like special group of our young diverse individuals from Youth Alliance. We'll come to Youth Alliance in a while, but before that, we'd like to briefly introduce about Vikalp Sangam and Vikalp Varta. So, Vikalp Sangam is a process, or you could say an organization also, which brings together different groups, networks, working towards alternatives. Alternatives across different spheres of our life, alternatives for as an individual, as a community, what we see. Um, as part of Vikalp Sangam, one of the things that Vikalp Sangam has been doing was organizing physical gatherings where people come together, learn from each other, move, and also collaborate. There's a possibility of co-creating, and also heading towards the the just society that we are all striving for. Till now we've had 20 of such physical gatherings on different themes across governance, economics, youth, which is on which today's Varta is focused. It is also in across different regions. Um, in these photos, you can see Shashank is there in one of the Vikalp Varta. The last Vikalp Varta we had in Auroville on alternative economies of Vikalp Sangam. So, along with these physical gatherings, conferences, we Vikalp Sangam also creates a repository, an archive of all these stories, uh, mainly in India, but I think it's across the world as well. Uh, these stories are of different alternatives of hope, of like different changes which different groups, organizations, networks are creating. There are almost 1500 plus of such stories which are available on this website. You can see the link below. Um yeah, and now coming to the today's Varta. So, firstly, why Vikalp Vartas? So, as a response to these COVID times, we realized that um, we are heading towards an online world, and we are in some ways we are breaking the physical boundaries, and and at the same time, even though we are moving towards an online world, we see that a lot of people are still working on different issues of our society. And we felt that it's a good idea to start to hear from them, to ask them questions, to learn from them, and to be able to walk with them, work with them in whatever way possible. So this Vikalp Vartas is just an idea to be able to do that. We've had 9 of such Vikalp Vartas till now across different areas from different organizations. The last one was by Marudham on education and learning. So this time we've invited Team Youth Alliance. So Youth Alliance is an organization working with youth based out of Delhi, but they work around across the country in different areas. Youth Alliance are also, like the main idea towards Youth Alliance is about participating, volunteering, and also you could, if you want to put it in a single phrase, then it's an experiment towards collective leadership that our our society could strive for. So yeah, with that, I'd like to invite Anisha, Shashank, and Vibhuti. So yeah, before that, just briefly also about the whole Vikalp Vartas. We have so as you know that the host will be speaking, so I'll request all of you guys to be on mute. If you have any questions at any point of time, you can put that into the chat box. We'll get to the Q&A once the Youth Alliance team finish their sharing. And also, I think there's this Vikalp Varta is a little special, as I mentioned in the first few minutes, which is there is a little bit of participation that we would want to have from you. So please be ready for that as well if you would like. So with that, I think over to you guys. We can start. I guess we can start with the movies.
विनय एक बार भाषा के बारे में पूछ लो. Is are people comfortable with English or Khichdi?
Yeah, so as communicated, this call is in English, but I am assuming you're all comfortable with English. If not, then please type in or you can speak as well.
We are also okay to share both in English and Hindi, like comfortable with both.
Sure.
Whichever is preferred.
I think Khichdi kar lo, it'll be nice. Unless there's somebody who doesn't understand Hindi.
खिचड़ी का आदत करना अच्छा है. लोगों के साथ जाके काम करोगे तो वही काम में आता है.
So, okay. ठीक है, तो खिचड़ी चलेगी. Thank you so much, Vinay. Thank you so much, Sangeeta, and everybody at Vikalp Sangam for giving us this space to share. I think it's really special for us as well, as much as Vinay has been mentioning, it's special like participatory, but I think it's for us, it's extremely special to be able to share and learn and share the questions that we have been trying to experiment with. We would like to start with a film. It's about a 4-minute film. Anisha, if you could help share screen. It's called What Makes Us Human.
People are in conflict. Nobody is talking to nobody.
Human beings are reduced from resources to mere data.
We're increasingly living in a world where the common belief is that the more material affluence we aggregate, the happier we will be.
The education that we have all experienced is first of all homogenized and monocultural.
Higher education and school education will claim that education is for what they would call holistic development. But does it actually happen? That's the question to ask. And I don't think it happens.
आज ऐसा एक शख्स नहीं है पूरी दुनिया में जिसको ये नहीं एहसास है कहीं छुपे कोने में कि दुनिया गलत रास्ते चल रही है.
What is that one thing which makes you fulfilled as a human being?
The sense of empathy, I guess, it makes me human.
I really feel fulfilled when I'm able to serve anyone. I am able to do something for anyone without any expectations.
I think it's a sense of community, just how people are there for each other in the most genuine way possible.
Youth Alliance is a space wherein youngsters from all across, all walks of life come together and explore themselves to see the harmony of their head, hands and heart.
Youth Alliance for me, the very first thing that I picked up from Youth Alliance was the ability to actually reflect, consciously try to lead a self-examined life.
One thing that drives people and makes people happy, it's not money, it's not ambition, it's a sense of meaning, and I think that's just the essence of Youth Alliance and what Gramya Manthan has been.
But where is that community which is helping young people develop on all those aspects, not just epistemic aspects, right? With this common shared values and purpose that we have to develop to do something for others. And again, I think Youth Alliance plays a very interesting role. I hope more of this happens actually. I mean, India needs, not 1, but 2, 10, 15, maybe 200 Youth Alliances.
Thank you, Anisha. Some other people have also joined during the video was playing. Welcome everybody. If there's anything that struck you from the video that really connected with you, you may share it in the chat. Also, like Vinay shared in the beginning, we are hoping to create this as a bit of a participatory conversation, more of a conversation. So if like our invitation is that if you would want to switch on your videos, it will make it a little more interactive. However, if of course internet and other challenges are there, then it's fine as well. Thank you for the video. So we'll begin with a little bit of a context in 15 minutes or so about the work of Youth Alliance, and then we'll invite some questions about what we share, and then we'll do a small group kind of sharing where we'll go in groups of 3, maybe like about 45 minutes later, 40 minutes later, and then we'll again come back and share our reflections and experiences and questions, and we can share more about what the work that we do. Broadly, that's how it will flow. So beginning to share about, thank you Suhas ji for sharing the site of the squirrel that is becoming rare. Thank you for sharing. that stuck with you. So we'll begin with the context. Vibhuti, could you share the presentation? So one of the central, like the video also brought out, one of the central foundations of our work is what we call humanness, or what makes us human, this question. And like humanity or human beings have had a very, very long journey. However, at this point of time in history, with all the technology, with all the circumstances, what does it really mean to be human? And that may mean, you know, like connecting with one's compassion, one's goodness, exploring oneself. That may also mean connecting with one's dark sides, trauma, some pain that might be experiencing, and like a whole lot of exploration. So that's been our key exploration. And one of the questions that we asked that's also like is again like a practice is that what does it really create to what does it take to create a space that welcomes one's whole self? And we feel that this is a response to our education system, which is our primary way, at least in the current times, to prepare human beings for the society, for the world. The education is the primary way of our society. So we feel that the current education system really blinkers our perception of the world, our worldview. For instance, makes it really kind of like makes all of us like a racehorse, or makes all of us like resources for the industrial, you know, that are to be fed into the industrial machine, serving it, you know, producing something or consuming something. And that kind of really reduces the potential of seeing what human being, like the whole human being. And it just like Rachit in the video also said, we are reduced to resources and further to mere data. So our quest has been that what does it really take to create a space that welcomes one's whole self, with all its imperfections, with cultural identities, with traumas of our ancestors, pain, also joy, also gifts, also abundances. We feel that everything is we carry in our biological and cultural being. So inviting that brings all of that in. And like one of the key things that in all of our cultures, Vibhuti, could you move to the next slide? All of our cultures in India and in different parts of the world has been circles, that when one sits in a circle, that creates a field for like for me to notice the humanity of the other person, for me to not just share and speak, for me to really also listen to the stories and experiences of the person who's sitting before me. And listening, I think, has been such an important practice and skill and value of our work. Listening not just to our peers. We say that there are three kinds of learning happening in any process that we hold. The first is that we shall learn with each other. Each other here are the participants, other participants. It can be the villages that we visit, or it can be other beings that we interact with. So learning from each other. The second is learning from ourselves in the company of each other. That there's so much learning that's within us. So what does it mean to draw forth that in the company of each other? And learning with each other. So learning about the world, learning about various things along with each other. And all that happens in a circle, and you know, pedagogy is related to that. Vibhuti, next slide. Another important thing has been appreciation. So we feel that as much as it's important to look at what's not working in the world or in a human being, which kind of in our culture, education culture, or generally culture, the price of mistakes is very high, of being wrong is really, really high. So what does it really mean to appreciate? Our core belief has been that whatever we appreciate grows. So what does it mean to really appreciate, you know, in a human being or in any surrounding, like in an environment? And that enables, again, drawing forth wisdom from people and from communities and cultures. Could you do the next slide? And the second most important thing, most important question for us has been, how do we create experiences that nurture capacity to hold multiple realities? Again, from our education or our modern, dominant modern industrial culture, we feel that there's only one worldview that dominates the scene. There's only one homogeneous idea of what progress means. कि मतलब अगर बढ़िया बड़ी गाड़ी है, AC है घर में, बढ़िया सड़क है, बड़ी बड़ी बिल्डिंग्स हैं तो उसे हम प्रगति कहते हैं. Yes, उसका कुछ वैल्यू है, वो सर्व करता है कुछ लोगों को, but is it the only definition of progress? We are not sure. We feel there are many others. Similarly, like while in school, there's very like what we study in our books is very, very disconnected from the real world. For instance, we might, like Sonam Wangchuk, take this example that in Ladakh, children learn F for fan, while they may not have seen fan at all in Ladakh, in the cold area of Ladakh. Or similarly, we hear about economic growth, poverty, and so on and so forth, which we learn as numbers. But what does it really? There's no felt experience of that. So how do we, with the next slide, how do we really create an experience that enable people to get in touch, to be able to appreciate, feel what a different reality can look like, and also learn to appreciate with both its gifts and also its challenges. So like in this picture, this is a picture from Kutch, where one of our one of our programs happened, and there are a few young people who are typically from urban backgrounds, spending time in rural areas, fetching water from a nearby pond. So it's definitely on the face of it, maybe challenging for the urban people, but when people get immersed into that, they also begin to appreciate the gifts that are available in a different surrounding, and therefore a different worldview. I'll just take an example. Like in one of the villages, one of the participants shared that a very old Dadima, who calls herself 102 years old, she would every day, she has difficulty in walking, but she would every day, as a ritual in the morning and evening, go to the top of the village and get some कुछ दाना लेके जाती थी, और सबसे जो टॉप ऑफ द विलेज था, वहाँ पे एक स्ट्रक्चर बना हुआ था, वहाँ पे पक्षियों के लिए वो वहाँ पे दाना डाल के आती थी. It must be like a 500 or a 600 meters walk for her from her home to that structure. And this particular participant asked the दादिमा कि भाई आप क्यों करते हो, इतना मुश्किल है, आप अपने छोटे लोगों को बोल दो. And she said one thing, कि पुण्य मिलेगा. And it's a very simple thing. It's part of one's living. However, for somebody who's coming from a very city-bred environment, it was so striking that somebody who's 102 years old, barely able to walk, is going every day to the top of the village to give dana to the birds because kuch punya milega. So that's the kind of worldviews that exchange and come in touch with each other. Vibhuti, could you do the next slide? So that's the experience of multiple realities. And I think that's one of the key capacities. Even we believe that the kind of crisis that we're facing in the world today, whether it is ecological crisis or socio-economic inequity, which is rising by the day, or it's political polarization today, or what we call spiritual disconnection, all of this is rooted in our ability to not be able to engage with realities that are different from our own. And one of the things, all the work that we do, we take people, typically young people in India, to context that is different from their own. Like again, this one, this is from Bhalaswa landfill in Delhi. Again, young people, we use milk packets, Maggi, whatever, all the most products in Delhi would come in plastic packets. But where does it really go? And to people who are aware about the environment, it's obvious that there's a dump yard, but a lot of people don't know. And a lot of people may have seen it on the side of the road, but what does it feel to really go there and spend time with people who are, daily picking something valuable from so-called waste, and the kind of felt experience that it brings to the body. Like one of the participants after this experience shared that I'm feeling, Nikita is here, I think she shared when we visited landfill in Palampur, that I'm feeling I don't know what to call it, fidgety, and there's a certain sensation in the body I'm feeling just being here. It's not, no flies are touching me, no waste is touching my body, yet I'm feeling that. So some of those kind of felt experiences happen, and that shifts people's life paths. That's what our experience has been. Vibhuti, could you move to the next slide? And what we have seen is when people's, some of our core beliefs have been that when there's a shift in people's inner landscape, it creates the condition for outer change. Outer change in terms of the choices that they shall make in their lives, daily choices like using less plastic, or even life choices that they shall make. And in the long run, the kind of world that they shall contribute to create. I can't see the next slide after the landfill slide. Yeah, so that's been like and then I'll pass the baton to Anisha to share more about the programs. Um, yeah, sorry, there's also stories in between.
You want to share about stories or should we share about programs?
Yeah, I'll just take a couple of minutes to share about stories. So a couple of stories, like I said, that when people have a felt experience, their inner reality begin to shift, and that kind of shifts their choices, life choices. So like there are these two stories out of many. One of it is Subodh and Sanket, who are brothers, comes from Itil Karanji in Kolhapur in Maharashtra. They began an organization, a group called Insight Walk, where they're saying that the education is disconnected. The village children want to study English and maths, and they want to give that experience to children as well. However, how do they, like their question has been, how do we involve mothers, particularly parents, particularly mothers, in the learning of children, so that all the cultural wisdom can flow to the children, like all the local environment learning can also flow to them, along with maths and science and whatever the curriculum, Maharashtra government curriculum says. So that's Insight Walk. I think they've been running it for 4 years now in Kolhapur. And what was very interesting in the COVID time, that they, right in the beginning, end of March, they began something called community farms. They were already doing some farming with children. However, they began community farms because they knew that a lot of workers would come back, and like one of the important needs would be food. So they began to, like with children, they began to create small community farms to serve like the needs of families of children. Similarly, another example is Mera Gaon Meri Duniya. This is in Ujjain, Madhya Pradesh. Again, very interestingly, Nagesh, I think, came for the first time in one of our programs in 2016. And in the 4 years, about 7-8 people from his village and Ujjain came to Gramya Manthan, and which slowly, like 3 of them, particularly Vasudha and Kamlesh and Nagesh, began an organization called Mera Gaon Meri Duniya. Again, supporting like education, supporting livelihoods in the village, as well as this is the village that they come from, like that's their native village, as well as kind of creating opportunities for young people from around Madhya Pradesh or around India, urban people, to come and get in touch, like Gramya Manthan, one of the programs that we do. So yes, I'll pass the baton with this to Anisha to share more about programs.
Thank you, Shashank. So I think everything that Shashank shared happens in the framework of 2 immersive journeys that we do, particularly at Youth Alliance, Gramya Manthan and Arthashastra. Vibhuti, can you share the slide for Gramya Manthan? So Gramya Manthan, it's a rural immersive journey that we do with young people, and also it's a deeper engagement that happens only with 30-35 people twice in a year. And the whole idea is that how does a urban youth understand the rural realities, and also see the rural reality in a way where they don't see, you know, village as a scarcity of resources or something that needs to be developed, but truly understands the abundance of the abundance of resources, which not be materialistic but cultural, as we go to the villages. Also, like a core idea of Gramya Manthan is that how does one learn through service learning? Like this photo is from our service learning time in the villages, where young people kind of spend 3 days with hands-on learning, picking up a theme from the village, which could be education, sanitation, talking about, you know, menstruation, or you know, just understanding understanding, you know, how the cultural wisdom is right now flowing in the next generation. And again, here the whole idea is that young people don't engage with the community from the space of that I know more and I am from city and I have come here to tell you, but they truly understand that what's in the culture of the village, that they can truly learn from and understand what, you know, how different the community is, and they might not need what we think of as scarcity there. also, I think one of the deepest experiences for a young person, particularly in Gramya Manthan, is to let go of their privilege. Like young people are like probably on the second, third day of the program are taken to the village, and they have to figure out their own home. They have to figure out their next meal, uh, and they have to just go in the village and ask somebody that can I stay at your home. And I think one of the most beautiful things we've heard is that uh, like uh, young people reflecting who are from cities that I knocked on somebody's door and they served me food. They served me food with love and care and utmost trust, and I stayed the night. But will I do if they come knocking at my door? Will I be able to treat them the same way? And I think just the whole experience shifts how a person understands empathy, how a person experiences empathy and trust at its core value. And a lot of focus here is also in the collective experience that 30 people are going together, where nobody is telling them that what you're feeling is wrong or right, but it's your experience, and we see you for who you are, and we value you for who you are. The program happens twice in a year. In June, we go to the villages of Kanpur, and in December, we go towards the villages of Kutch. The second program that we do is Arth Shastra. It's it's a more contextual program, which is rooted in the understanding that how nature and humans, like, they are not separate, and what kind of separation that has seeped into our lives when we reflect. um, here all uh, Here also, like, it's a deeper engagement with 30-35 people we do every year, uh, where the context is that one understands and one builds their connection with nature, uh, and and also at the same time understand that how my presence affects the world at large, like how we are living in an interconnected world, where if I choose to if I choose to use soap or shampoo, or any chemicals at my home, or if I choose to drink a bottled water, how does it affect a village in Himachal Pradesh, or how does it affect our nature? We are not separated. And here also, I think one of our deep focus lies on individual or personal transformation, but keeping systemic change or seeing the bigger picture together. That we might not be in the position to change the bigger picture, but are we aware what the bigger picture is? And we take inspiration from our individual actions, while people also choose to work towards systemic change and eventually make the choice. I think through both the programs, one of the greatest things to see is that once a young person knows that what is reality, or what are different kinds of reality, it's very difficult for them to unsee them anymore. Um, and they can eventually make that choices of how am I contributing to it. So they choose to work in different NGOs, or choose to work in development sector, choose to take up a cause at their own level, and go on from there. Yeah. Vibhuti, yeah, I'm done. You can share the next.
Anisha, do you want to share about community?
Thank you, Anisha.
Also, post program.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I think our deepest focus is also on building a community of like-minded people. If one is just through the virtue of people having a shared experience and experiencing a common reality together, like a very deeper space for young people is created uh, in the programs, and also at a larger level, Youth Alliance community, where they feel supported and where they feel trusted to try what their dream is, or to try to serve the world. it's also an experience that enables the young people in manifold ways where they find themselves breaking from conventional route of choosing to work in a corporate job, choosing to go into businesses, but like great inspiration flows within the community, where if somebody is working in education and there's a young person who's very passionate about education and want to work, they have somebody to look up to. They have somebody to look up to, and they have a different kind of role modeling. I think it's very interesting to see that we are in our 8th, 9th year right now, and people who joined Youth Alliance at the very beginning, and young people who are entering Youth Alliance's space right now, they are able to take those elder people in the community as their role models to serve the society. It's also a beautiful it's also like a very beautiful experience where one experiences deeper connection of being who they are, and experiencing the other person to not judge them by who their family is or what their background is or what they have studied, but see them as a person, as who they are. And again, like once a person experiences that, they also take forward these learning in different communities they are part of, in their work, in their families, and other places.
Thank you, Anisha. Just sharing a little bit about our ecosystem work also. Directly, we work with about 30 people in a program at one time. But in the last few years, we've also been engaging with different organizations, different communities around the country who are also working in a similar sphere of inner journeys with youth and young people, so that we all can work together towards fulfillment. So we've been a part of the 2069 network, the Alternative Vikalp Sangams, and like learning along with so many beautiful work and organizations that are happening around the country so far. And just wanted to share a little bit about our organizational practices. Formally, we are about a 9-year-old organization now in August, and our attempt has been that how does running an organization does not inhibit from us from doing our work really truly, but also enables us and like really makes us more freer to do that. So one of our intentions, deep intentions, has been the practices of well-being and wholeness. And it means that like we see our work as a regular lifelong practice, and the intention of going deeper into our inner work is one of our main works also. Like all of us do not claim to be experts. Like we are no experts in any sphere. We are just learning from our own experiences, and how can we continue to see the wholeness in our lives and continue to practice it. And we do it in different forms. Like one of the forms is that when we show up on our programs, we show up as facilitators and also as participants. So every time we go through a program, we are going through that experiencing of seeing the realities of the world, of seeing ourselves more deeply one more time. So every time we keep going through a deeper inner journey for ourselves. And there are also some practices like this. We've constituted like a 15-day learning journey period in our organization where it's like a paid learning leave for somebody in the organization to go out, learn from a new ecosystem, from a different experience of life. We also have processes in our team work, such as the Fry Shift days. Like all Fridays, we get together for about 2 hours, outside of work, just to hang out as people, see who we are as human beings with each other. One of our main experiment has been around wealth, of seeing the multiple forms of wealth and not just see wealth in terms of money or finances. And we've been grateful to be blessed with so many beautiful elders who shared their learning, shared their experiences, shared their wisdom with us over the last 8 years to help us create what we have created so far. And that's come in terms of so much of social capital and experiential capital and spiritual capital. And we've also been blessed with not having one big institutional donor. Like our funding comes from a lot of individuals, also it comes from participants and alumni who've gone through our program, and that really gives us the liberty to keep doing the work. And so we never had to organize our work under the pretext of getting like a funding from one big organization, and so we've been very blessed with that also. We have also been doing some experiments around salaries and drawing out compensation for our work. In the last few years, it's been very need-based. Like each of us come together and share what my needs are. Like, how much do I need to survive, and how much do I also need to save? What is my expectation and hope? And it's very transparent. Like there's no one authority who sanctions what will each person get as money, but like all of us collectively know who's drawing how much money, who needs how much, and what's happening. And since last year, we've also been started to seeing our capital in terms of the different forms, and we like really see a lot of abundance in when we put everything together that we've received so far in the last 8-9 years. Vinay was also mentioning about our experiments in collective leadership. A few years ago, we realized that we do not want to be in an organization where it's like a one man or a one face leadership, where all the power and the authority comes to one person. We've shifted towards saying like a collective leadership model where all of us, like all the entire team of 8-9 people, collectively hold the onus of making decisions, of representing the team, of living the purpose. Like all of us are collectively like really authentically, deeply living the purpose. It's not just left to one face or one person in the organization. And that has also meant to challenge the authority figures. Like there's nobody in our organization who has to sanction leaves. There's nobody who tells what needs to be done. And all of us collectively decide what our roles are going to be. All of us collectively decide how much, like when do I need to work? When do I need to take a break? When do I need to go for a learning journey? Where do I show up? And they're basically like 4 types of relationships that we figured out, and it's a collective responsibility to represent the full team. And so there's like a big aspect of updating the team. So all the smaller teams that work independently definitely update the full team, and everybody knows most things. Like there's a free flow of information. Information is not biased or is not like collected at one person's state. And so there's also a role of consensus taking, and there's input, like we take inputs before we go ahead and make final decision. And there's also consent, like when we have to make some big decisions that affect the entire team, there's a consent taken from the entire team before we move ahead. And it's been an interesting experience in the last 2 years. There's also a lot of challenges and a lot of learning that comes about. We know it slows down some processes, it slows down the decision making sometimes. It also means to really slow down and understand what each person is understanding, feeling, what each person's need is. But it's been a beautiful experience so far, and we're very grateful that even on the outside, people have started to see us as a whole and not as just one person representing the organization. This is also something that we've recently become aware of. We've known that we are all multi-situated individuals. Like all of us have deep engagements with our families, with our immediate communities, of our neighbors, of our relatives, our work, our peers, and our friendships. And what we've tried to do is that we've tried to really reclaim the idea of that the organization owns their employees, and we've tried to bring together the work that we do in families, the work that we do in our immediate communities with our friends, the work that I do on myself, become a very important part of the work that we also do at Youth Alliance. So we've noticed that all of us have really ventured outside of Youth Alliance work to also see where our interest lies. So especially in COVID, we've all realized that each of us got pulled into different directions of our interest, and we started to contribute, volunteer with different organizations, with different initiatives, so that we could support our passion, our creativity, and our service as well. Just quickly concluding that in the time of COVID, we've been doing this campaign called Hope Through the Cracks. And it was quite an interesting opportunity that arose, because the ideas of uncertainty, the ideas of not controlling, the ideas of really looking at nature as whole, the idea of looking at our relationships and slowing down, all of that became an opportunity through the forced pandemic, and like when we were all forced to be inside. So we've been offering webinars around growing our own food, becoming more sustainable. We've also been offering a lot of community spaces, like where we can come share how our relationship with our parents are unfolding now that we are living back with our parents at home together. How is it that we're engaging with the economic system, because the jobs were becoming uncertain. There was a lot of salary cuts happening. There was so much going on with the mental well-being. So we've been offering all of that, and all of us at the team has also taken a time to like really slow down and like learn and offer those learnings also in the community. And the idea has been to see, like what are the hopes that are being visible through this time of crisis. What is it that's becoming visible to us? That's been our intention throughout. And just lastly, we wanted to share that, like some of the questions that are working us right now that we are exploring, that we haven't found answers yet. One of them has been, how do we bring together self-work and systemic work for the healing of humanity? Like we've been doing deep self-work, but haven't directly engaged in systemic work. So how do we bring that together? And how does self-work also occur and show up in systemic work? Like when we're working for policies, how does self-work also show up there? Another one has also been like, how do we create these inner spaces for young people who are not economically privileged? For somebody who's figuring out their roti kapda makan, like would something like this, like really directly appeal to them? Would it work for them? That's been a question we've been exploring, and we've also been exploring that how do we become relevant to different parts of the society? How do we show up for them also? And one of our other intentions and hopes have also been to engage with different worldviews. Like we don't believe in trying to like take sides or like blame the other. Like there's been such a war going out in our world against Corona, against different nations, against different political parties. Like we want to call out what's wrong, what's not happening right, but we also want to be able to approach human beings engaging with our own lenses, but with empathy. So that's also been one of the other challenges and questions that's been working us these days. I hope through this we've been able to give you a glimpse of what our work is, what our journey has been.
Yes, thank you, Vibhuti. So if there are any questions, any reflections, you may type on the chat, or you may also share it out loud in your voice. Because since the group is small, we would love to hear something at this point from somebody else.
Okay.
Right.
I think till the time someone gets ready, I'll go. Being a host, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask a question or not.
There's one question in the chat box, Vinay, if you want to start with that. Akash.
George.
George is asking one question.
George.
Yeah, but please start with your own question, Vinay.
We can start. Great. So, I've been seeing the journey of Youth Alliance and you guys as well. So, and you shared about Youth Alliance and its work deeply with respect to its programs, its processes, and what all questions and practices that you guys follow. I was just wondering, how does it affect on your own inner journey? Like being able to be part of such a network where everyone is coming together, reflecting. I assume that is empowering, and there might be some issues as well. But I would also like to just understand a little bit about your own personal journeys during this, during the building of this movement or organization.
I'll respond to the first part of the question, and then second, whoever, like Anisha, Vibhuti, and anybody else who wants to respond. So the first part, that how like the impact of this on our inner journey. In my perspective, I think it's been very enriching. Like this kind of spirituality is not kind of bereft from engaging with the world. It is about transforming relationship with every aspect of life, like in my intimate relationships, romantic relationships with my parents, with the workers who come at may work with me, with anybody, like with the other beings. So how does one become aware of the interconnectedness and then be able to transform one's relationship is like, I think, an important pursuit there. And therefore, like being in collective reflection spaces with other human beings who are interested in the same pursuit is very enriching. However, I think recently we've been also recognizing that, in fact, Sangeeta only shared one of these perspectives, that like when you're in constantly circle spaces, it ends up creating a codependency, that you end up becoming dependent on the circles to let you reflect on something, and not like let the heat build up within you for inner progress or inner journey. So that, I think that also happens sometimes, because it's sometimes hard to take a break for one's well-being, or one's like to go for Vipassana or go for any like really deep, like which require us to unplug. So we're also kind of reflecting on that. But broadly, I think it's been very enriching, and it creates space for us to further our inner journey as individuals or as a group. However, personal journeys, Anisha, Vibhuti, if you want to respond.
I come from a very conventional Baniya family in Ambala, and I grew up with my parents expecting their girl child to go do a very conventional job, and my father is into an advertising business. So we as a family really contribute to the environment with printing lots of flexes and using a lot of chemicals. So like that's my background. And like for me to having gone through 8 years of being with the community and Youth Alliance and constant churning, like I've really unlearned and explored my schooling. I've also unlearned and explored the idea of money with my parents and my entire family being into a business and like growing and constantly doing. I've also had to unlearn and like really explore some ideas of my own gender, and like being born in a family where like girls weren't the best somebody to have like as children. So just being with the community has helped me so much, and it's also given me a language so that I've been able to work with my parents, and it's a beautiful relationship where we both come together and also like live separately. Like he still continues to do his business and I continue to contribute in my own way, but we've found ways to coexist and co-inhabit a beautiful family. And like just this constant awareness and like just looking into myself has been quite challenging and an interesting journey. It's gotten me to learn so much about myself and about the world. And there's almost every year there's like a newer leap of faith and a newer leap of learning that happens into privilege, into gender, into environment, into health. Like, so there's been like leaps of learning that's happened for me, and I'm very grateful for that.
My background is similar to Vibhuti. I also come from a like fairly traditional Baniya family in Haryana, Rewari, and like growing up, I think everything as a girl, like we were loved, but we weren't kind of given freedom, and it was told that girls are supposed to do this or do that. And I grew up with quite quite a fair understanding of what a good girl is, and very definite gender roles in my life. And also I think like I always feel that there was a voice inside me that always said that there's something not right with it, or I had questions, but the questions weren't catered, at least in school or in family. And those questions uh, culminated into something bigger. And it I call myself, like, or even my family calls me as a rebel now, when I entered in Youth Alliance space, and all those questions got catered there because people acknowledged that they were valid questions, and I was heard. I think it's been very difficult uh, to be on the same page as family. I've never lived away from my family. Like, it was just for a year when I went to college. I lived away, but I've lived uh, with my family, most of the time. So uh, when we talk about engaging with opposite worldviews, like you enter home and you're engaging with an opposite worldview. It's been like that. But it's been a very interesting journey of self acceptance, and also acceptance of who your parents are. So I remember, like, my earlier conversations would enter into a lot of blame game with my family, that you do this, you do that, you made me do this. But now it's like I understand who I am, and I also understand they can't be who I am, so I have to quit that expectation completely. And it's like the conversations aren't always leave us happy or chirpy, but we have learned to coexist, and we give each other our spaces. So that's been very interesting. And also to show up in my extended family or even my school friends with confidence that what I'm doing is what I want to do, while they're choosing to do different kind of works, choosing a different lifestyle altogether. That's been a journey of a lot of courage also.
Yeah, thank you, Anisha. George asked a question as well.
Yes.
Vibhuti, do you want to take up that question?
Yeah. In collective leadership, there's been quite a lot of challenges, as well as a lot of learning and excitement about decision making. And one thing that we've learned is that conflicts arose at a lot of times when we weren't able to see all aspects of the topic, because each of us comes from so much depth of experiences, and we are all able to see different sides of it. So when we try to jump into and feel constrained by time, and we felt like we needed to make a decision very quickly, there were times when it didn't fit in with all of us. Like, there were some decisions that we couldn't go through together completely very quickly. And one of the learnings has been to really slow down in terms of like real physical slowness, and also in slowness of understanding and being able to see different perspectives. I'm trying to think of an example. Like, a lot of times, like when we started to do this collective leadership, there have been a lot of conflicts, I would say, or differences in opinions or ideas that came about. How do we want to represent the organization on the outside? People would say, like, we want to talk to the founder, or we want to talk to the CEO, and like there were these layers that were building up about saying, okay, like but inside we're doing very different experiments, and we feel and think in different values, but on the outside it's kind of creating different differences. So we had to slow down and really understand and listen to what each one's of experiences was, what was the edge for each of our learning. I think in the collective leadership, it really recognized a lot of edges, like a lot of life experiences that we haven't like synced in yet, like a lot of times where we haven't like gone through each other's experiences and choices yet. Yeah, Shashank, you want to add something?
I just want to add that often we realize that क्या बात हो रही है, क्या decision लेना है, वो इतना ज़्यादा महत्वपूर्ण नहीं होता. पर जो उसके साथ भावनाएं जुड़ी हुई हैं और जो अटैचमेंट है उस भावनाओं के साथ वो बहुत ज़्यादा महत्वपूर्ण हो जाता है. So like really giving space to the emotions and attachment to those emotions with respect to the content has been a practice as well. And often I think in the rush to make a decision that's ignored. So we try and slow down on that. But conflicts, like differences do occur, and some of them are able to get surfaced, some of them stay unsurfaced also. Yeah. The other question that JR asked, I hope we answered your question, George. JR asked about salary and how are you able to help your parents understand because they would expect you to earn some money and do saving to sustain the future. So yes, I think we'll share with an example as well. I think in Anisha's home, they would her parents would often say that, "Arey, you've been working for 5 years, but where is your promotion? Why aren't you getting any promotion?" Or in my family, people would ask, "What's your salary?" Or "You've been doing 8 years. How much has it increased?" And that's a very regular, usual question. It would anger me earlier, like 4 years ago, it would anger me, but now I've come to really be humorous about it. And rather, we would every year we do campaigns to sponge off our family. Like for 3 years we've been doing now that to really get in touch with our immediate family, like our parents, our siblings, and even extended families, to really invite them to contribute to the work that we are doing because we think it's very important for them as well. So it's been interesting, and I think often, at least in my example, my parent, my mother would often say that, "Arey, tum samaj ke liye to sab kuch kar rahe ho, parivar ke liye kuch nahi kar rahe ho. Like you're doing everything for the society, nothing for your family. Oh, you guys seem to be teaching young people, but you are not. You are so undisciplined yourself. You can't manage your own food yourself." Those kind of comments, I think all of us have received, and a lot of people received. And I think, however, over time, for them to notice each of our commitment towards what we're doing, and then natural discipline and maturity in even engaging with family conflicts or family matters has been very interesting. One very immediate example has been that we didn't have an AC here in our home here in Uttarakhand, and it's been really hot, and my parents were wondering should they buy it, and I was of that opinion that I don't think, at least for personally, I didn't need an AC. However, if they need, I'm very happy to get it installed and so on. It just got installed 4 or 5 days ago, and my mother has been really pestering me that you should come and sleep in AC, and I'm like, I like it. It's nice indulgence, but I don't like it when I come out of it. So also this kind of constant observing one's need and kind of being conscious of that, and especially when parents observe that, they understand where it's coming from. Of course, in none of this, it means that we don't earn enough to meet our needs or to meet our parents' needs. Like if there are health needs or other needs, that's I think we're conscious of. So yeah, thank you for your question, JR. I don't know what the full form is. There are a couple of other questions. Ashok ji has a comment. Thank you, Ashok ji.
Shashank, just request you to read out the question also.
Okay.
Whenever you are.
Okay, so there's a question saying, how would you say about orphan serving in India? Serving. I don't know if I fully get what you mean.
We can request whoever asked the question to just speak briefly. So I'm sorry, we do not have your name. But whoever asked this question of orphan serving in India, you can come online and ask.
Till he asks, Ashish has a very nice question that how do you deal with invisible hierarchies and privileges, and conversely, how are experiences, different skills recognized as something that you need to be respected and learned from? Not everyone is equal in all ways. So the desire and ethics of being equal in decision making, but also having different roles in this. this is especially in issues between ages, perhaps. Thank you, Ashish, for the question. Does anybody like Anisha, Vibhuti want to share?
Can I share something? Ashish, thank you. This is such an insight that we've also held, and we felt that in collective leadership, we value each person's voice and opinions and thoughts and experiences. Yet, there's some like there are moments when somebody who's had like a longer experience in the organization or an interest, or they've been exploring something more deeply, there's a very invisible, like you mentioned, there's an invisible hierarchy or a privilege that they receive, and sometimes we've also felt like there are some decisions that we've had to, like each of us had to ask, is it okay if I like just go through with that without like really having everybody's consent on board or consensus. Like there are moments when we've had to have just consensus, like just saying, can everybody live with it? And there are moments when we're also exploring like what are the different levels of decisions that needs to be made by everyone, like with everybody's consent. And there are some that can be taken, like we've recently had a new person join in our team, and we're exploring like how do we engage them equally enough in all the decision making that all of us are doing. So we've been separating some decisions, like decision around like salaries. I think like we've said that, can somebody who's worked for more than a year in our organization come on board, and for the rest, they're still exploring. So yeah, Anisha also wanted to add something on this. And
maybe if I could also just clarify the first part of the question, which is to do with invisible hierarchy. So, I mean, somebody who's been around for a long time, or who's more articulate, or who comes from a particular class or background or gender or whatever. And so you might have, like, and I'm speaking from experience from Kalpurich, because we have exactly the same kind of decision-making process with 20, 30 people. But there are these sorts of differences. So new people might not be fully capable, for instance, or not feel the confidence of being able to speak openly. Some older people might try and dominate, even though formally everybody's supposed to be in the decision-making process. Also, what gets reflected from outside, because outside people are looking at you in different ways. No, they might think of Shashank as being the CEO and you as being, okay, a junior person. That happens a lot of time with us. And sometimes that kind of influences even decision-making inside. So that's the kind of dynamics I'm saying. How do you come across that, and then how do you deal with it?
I think dynamics around gender, around organization authority, like you said, and also around legitimate learning and experience, all of this comes. And we are still engaging with some of them, especially it creates friction when it comes from the outside, as in it does impact the system of collective leadership. And we are learning how to integrate all of these things. For instance, one of the things around gender has been, at least that's what I noticed, that in a event that we might show up at, very naturally, like if we are invited to some event, the organizers would end up looking at the man, or would end up looking at the CEO or the leader, so to say, the leader of the organization. And it's hard to really, it needs a little bit more awareness to really let go of that privilege, and also to push like a different frame of thinking. The other practice has been that in terms of particularly holding and creating partnerships and relationships that are with external stakeholders, how do we really enable all the members, if not all people who spend more than 2 years in the organization, which are 6 of us, to really go out there and create partnerships for the function that they hold in the organization. And that really, so for like, that means relationship with elders and mentors, that means relationship with, for a certain program that we're doing, that means a relationship for raising money. And that is something we realized that slowly a web has been, in the last 2.5 years or so since then we have been practicing this, slowly a web begins to create. So the representative for an organization, for Youth Alliance, for that person, for that stakeholder becomes, say, Anisha or say Rachit. and that really creates some different dynamics. However, like I would say, still the dominant factor still remains like some of how the external world views it. Yeah, that I think was there. Anisha, do you have something to say on this, or we could move to other questions? There are flurry of
Yeah, I just also wanted to add that like these things are not underlying. Like we kind of put the elephant in the room and also talk about it and in the team. And it's like if it's a new team member or if it's one of our triggers, how we are engaging with these hierarchies or these privileges, there are enough spaces through process and through our personal attention to one's presence and well-being that we are able to share about it. And I think also we are building our own understanding and resilience to how do we have these some of the difficult conversations within us that take us to common consensus or understanding. But at a deeper level, I also feel that once all of us also experience each other, in its full form, where we see, harmony in being and doing, there's a deeper level of trust where we are also able to understand that a person, how he or she's, choosing to behave, it's because of some unconscious or subconscious learnings that they have, and just the acknowledgement of all of that clears a lot of tension in the air and helps us to move forward.
Thank you. Sangeeta has a question on how do we relate to the word spirituality and Indian, like I'll read the question. Vibhuti, Anisha, do you think it's a good time to do small groups, or should we take up questions and then do small groups?
I also had a small question up there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
Vinay, you were saying something.
Suhas, I had a question around patriarchy.
How do you de-learn? How the boys de-learn their role as a man in the patriarchal context that they have been brought up for, say, 17, 18 years? Can somebody share that experience? That will be very good learning for others who are listening.
Alok is also here, who has been a community member. Alok, perhaps.
Yeah, anyone.
Briefly. You want to share, Alok? Sorry, I'm putting you on a spot.
Leave it. You don't want to leave it.
मेरे को क्वेश्चन पे थोड़ा सा ये करना पड़ेगा, हालांकि काफी ऑब्वियस क्वेश्चन है ये, मतलब काफी मतलब जनरल क्वेश्चन है, लेकिन हाँ थोड़ा सा मेडिटेट करना पड़ेगा, हम दूसरे क्वेश्चन के तरफ आई थिंक चले.
ठीक है, ठीक है. Just keep it in mind and think about it next time. Yeah? Okay.
I think we are about 7 women in the team and 7 women and 2 men in the team. And so patriarchal patterns do show up many times within the team or outside. Personally, I think it's been for me to really notice the privilege as well as the the shame, fear of being rejected, need to be right, those kinds of things that I have inherited from the culture of patriarchy, and like to constantly be able to talk about that. Like one of the things we were reflecting recently in the team was that why aren't the boys as vulnerable as the women in the team or in the programs as well? And we realize that it's harder for the men to be vulnerable about their emotional like feelings. And it's been like we try, at least within the team, we try and live that value, that try and open up, try and really touch parts of us as men that typically are not available to men in terms of, like even surrendering, even letting go of control and some of that. It's a,
being able to cry when you feel like.
Yeah.
It's It's a wonderful thing. Please avail of it.
Yeah.
It's very relieving when when you are very tense, even biologically.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Swati.
Yeah.
So to Sangeeta's question, I think the question was that how do you relate to the word spirituality with the work that you do? And what are your different sources of wisdom, learning, and inspiration? And how do you connect to Indian lineage, heritage in this? I think we weren't using the word spirituality at all, maybe till a year ago, because we thought it was something like we knew what it is or what it may be, but we were shy of using it because we thought we're not as deep or we're not really doing spiritual work. We're doing social change with awareness. However, more proactively, we've begun to use and reclaim some of that as we are also, because we began to interact with some religious groups, some groups that are spiritual, they call themselves spiritual. And we learned that what they are doing, we are also doing, and we're doing it in a different way. So in that sense, how we connect to spirituality is whatever relates to the matters of the spirit, that has us in touch with something that's really, and for the lack of better word, divine, or which is beyond ourselves. To be able to get in touch with that is what I think we relate to, and that often shows up. It shows up in the form of serendipity. It shows up in the form of just connection with somebody and being able to notice or being loved by somebody in a space unconditionally. In terms of what have been our sources, again, I would say that we are all हम सब English educated रहे, मतलब टीम में mostly रहे, और हमारे learning के sources वही थे जो Eastern inspired थे, but West से मिले थे हमें. So authors like Parker J. Palmer, Peter Block, Joanna Macy, like these were some of the authors that we really saw and we used because we realized that it was available to us as tools, and we could pick up the tools and use it and gradually deepen our theoretical or philosophical understanding. So that's where we began, and we're grateful for that also, to lineage that flowed from there. And a lot of elders that we engaged with also engaged with that in that way, like kind of using frameworks that like systems change frameworks, deep listening framework that have all come from the West. I mean, they're inspired from the East, but came from the West. However, only recently, again, maybe 2 years ago or so, we've begun to really look for, although Kabir has been one that's been inspiration all through, but I think 2 years ago, we really tried to look for sources, deepened our understanding of Tagore, Gandhi, Kabir, Shah Latif, like mystic poets in India. We did a very interesting gender session with Shabnam Virmani from the perspective of mystics. We've been trying to read some thought, yoga philosophy, some of that also. And we've been trying to become part of those gatherings as well. So it's been interesting that way. So yes, some of them I named, there are some others. What's been the role of elders? Anisha, do you want to respond to this one? Role of elders in Youth Alliance?
I think it's we have been very grateful to different mentors who've come and shared their trust, wisdom, knowledge, learnings to all of us in different ways. One of it is that the spaces that we are able to create through our programs, our mentors and our elders they've joined us in those spaces, quite unconditionally every time, and have led on to passing those learnings to the young people also who join us. Also, there has been very, open channel to have those conversations with our elders, particularly where we are able to share with them the unconventional path, or the experiments that we are doing, and to be able to hear from them that what has been their experience or what might possibly be our challenges, and we try and be open to the feedback they have for us, being an external eye every time. Also, like we have also been very grateful to have elders who understand our work in the ways, and also share back our work in the ways that we can pass it on to, you know, some of the parents, or, you know, some of the other elder people who, you know, who we interact with in different spaces, and can communicate to them. So that has, yeah, I think, that.
Bye.
Thank you. Mohan Bhai has asked a question. Anisha shared something on the chat. So the question is, sorry, where is the question? Yeah, I'm curious if there is a specific moment that made you realize that you should challenge the conventional path and do something like this. What was the process? How did you all come together? And the second question is, what are the typical stories of folks who sign up for your programs? What makes them look for such opportunities? What's their background? What's their experience of going back after the program? Vibhuti, you have thoughts?
Hello.
Yeah, Jyotish.
जी मुझे कब से मैं सबको सुन रहा हूँ तो मुझे बहुत ही क्यूरियस हो रहा है. हेलो हेलो
ज्योतिष बात कर रहे हैं?
हाँ.
जी जी ज्योतिष yes.
Jyotish, can we take Mohan Bhai's question and then come to you?
Okay. हाँ.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
जो सेकंड पार्ट है वो पहले आंसर करती हूँ कि बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग मतलब मोस्टली द बैकग्राउंड हैज बीन मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द पीपल हैव बीन फ्रॉम मिडिल क्लास अपर मिडिल क्लास city folks, and we've also had like about 30% people from other backgrounds. Mostly they come in finding some incompleteness in their life around either if they're doing a job or they're studying. They all of them have had like great friendships, you know, like a great good satisfactory life, but they're feeling ki kuch missing hai. And I think one of the first experiences that people share when they come to the program is that they feel received with their full wholeness of themselves. Like the fullness of themselves is what they feel received at, and they feel that they've never been listened to like this before in any other environment, or their questions haven't been tagged like weird or, you know, crazy questions. So I think like the finding of community of people like looking at life in a similar way or challenging life in a similar way, that community has been one of the most important aspects for people. And their experience of going back has been that like they feel that they feel that they receive some energy so that they can go back into their own challenging environments like workspaces or studying. And then they also feel like they receive some tools and some perspectives to engage with their families, their communities, their friends in slightly different way, and they feel like they can now go back and, you know, take on the challenge of their parents asking ki career mein kya kar rahe ho, yahi karna hai kya. Like they're able to really engage with that question with much more grit and resilience. And about the conventional path, I don't remember if there was a special moment in my life. It was just an experience of my own education, and I felt like this is not the idea of education, higher education in college that I thought that I would be receiving. That really flipped me out, thinking कि अरे मैंने 12 साल पहले ही स्कूल में लगाए, इतना वेस्ट लगा बहुत सारे matters में, and then another 3 years. I don't think I would want to do that or let my younger brothers and sisters go through an experience. So my journey of education and or challenging the kind of education began there, but it's been a long, it took a few years to eventually be able to say, okay, I'm challenging the conventions. Like it also needed a lot of affirmation and external validation because challenging the system wasn't supported by family or friends. And it's been an experience for most of us that the support hasn't come from our own communities. We had to form different communities that would support us in challenging the convention. So yeah.
Thank you for the question and thank you for the response. There is a lot flowing on in the chat. Sudhata ji asked about sharing it with other networks. Anisha responded, yes, we've been trying to share some of these learnings and actually some people from BRM are also, Blue Ribbon Movement are also here, and it's been very interesting to learn from them and cross-pollinate with them. Ankur who was part of 2013, like one of the programs, Lead the Change. He's here. Thank you, Ankur, for your compliment. His question is that what are the instruments to eliminate these social stigma or social diseases from our society and world? We talked about values and empathy, but I think these values are getting more artificial. How do we come out from these artificial values and imbibe in ourselves a true such value that save the world from jeopardizing the humanity and mankind? Thanks for the question, Ankur. I feel for us, at least at Youth Alliance, the anchor has been daily living. So whether we speak of values or theories based on values, frameworks based on empathy and compassion, etc., they are great. However, if it doesn't come to daily living, it doesn't go forward for us. That's our anchor. And somebody called Humberto Martuana, who we have been recently learning with, who's a cultural biologist, he said, like, he's been trying to see intersection of culture and biology. And he would say that, what we choose in the manner of our living, that gets conserved for our future generations by virtue of it creating an evolutionary drift. Like each little choice create a little drift in the evolutionary path of humanity. And so daily choices are not just daily choices, they are evolutionary choices in that sense. Not to romanticize it, but like to really see it from that perspective. So daily living, I think, Ankur, has been our anchor. Thank you for your question. Yeah. Yes. I am Vibhuti, Anisha, do you have any question that you can see in the chat? I may be missing something.
Sangeeta also mentioned to share about Samvad.
Right.
If any of you would like to share about that.
Anisha.
So Samvad is an annual gathering that we do somewhere around Feb-March every year, purely again like a gift of an elder to us at Youth Alliance. One of our mentors, Sadanand-ji, who lives in California and is visiting India every year for 3 months. I think he's one of our anchors to hold Samvad every year. In the pure spirit of that, how do we create more spaces which encourage dialogue in the with the value of curiosity, with the value of again seeing an individual with their own truth rather than believing in one fine truth for the world, and how do we take the practice of dialogue in our communities once we experience it in a space like Samvad. It's a 1 to 2 day gathering every year, which is facilitated by Sadanand-ji. Also, Ravi Gulati, who's been a close mentor to us from a long time, and few of us at Youth Alliance. And every year we pick up a theme in whose context we kind of build a space of dialogue and invite close friends, community members to engage in the experience. I think for me personally, it's an experience which is a great reminder for me to that what curiosity is, or how do I practice it, how do I take forward those learnings in my closest relationships. And also it's a beautiful gathering to envision a world that we all want to live in, so just that. This year we had an online format of Samvad because we couldn't do the physical gathering because of COVID, the theme was around practices and challenges and opportunities in today's times.
I have a question. May I ask?
Yes.
So I was wondering, Shashank, Vibhuti, and Anisha, thanks for the lovely talk, and it's so inspiring to listen to you all talking so clearly and so well articulated, so many ideas. So thanks for this. And I think one question that I wanted to ask was about how do you deal with the issues um, of when people who sort of like we make certain organizations, right? We initiate certain processes and then we get very attached to them, and it happens to all of us. And a lot of young people face this issue when they get into the social sector, that a lot of older people are very attached to their organizations, to the processes that they have started. And this detachment, you can't do it. That is a process that they have to do it, and they also don't let you to take the ownership because of the attachment and the ways that they feel so maybe stuck with the ways that the organization works. So my one question is this, that how and that is why I have seen many of my even friends who said that, yeah, I don't want to work anymore with any senior people because they're so attached in their ways of working. I'll just start something that I will do based on how I think things should be. So how do we how do you navigate, or what do you think about this issue? And the second question that I had, which is unrelated to the first one, which is that a lot of social movements, youth social movements, or usually groups who sort of react to situations, and much needed because they have to. There are so many issues that concern us and we have to respond as quickly as we can, might say that this sort of work is very difficult, in a reactionary sort of a situations. And so you can do it because you're not at the forefront, but we can't do it because we have to respond to the crisis right now. And that is not the luxury that we have to reflect, to stop, see how it works and evolves. So what would you, or how would you respond to that?
I got dropped off in between, sorry. Vibhuti initially want to respond. I got the gist of the question towards the end. Like there's so much reaction, as in need for reaction from the youth that comes, also because the people are affected by it directly and they may not have the luxury to stop and pause and reflect. So how do we engage with that? Yeah, I think the recent CA and NRC thing that happened, particularly, we were in Delhi also. That's such a great example, and we are yet to figure this thing out. That how do we, like generally as a culture, like in the dominant way, reflection and creating reflecting spaces is not such a important work. Like if you go to the donors, they're like, this is not important work. You should rather go on the front lines to relief work, or like even with Corona, the stuff that we were trying to do wasn't really considered important, as in the dominant systems. So one thing has been that to continue to do it despite all of that. The other is that with CA, NRC in Delhi, we did participate in some of the protests, and there was like some of, there was an importance of need to raise a voice. There was importance, like we also saw a lot of some of our friends, both sides, like on the ABVP side, one of our friends getting very violent and very strong opinionated, like also physically, also on the other side, like people who are opposing CA. So far our response has been that can we serve those by creating reflective or healing spaces for those who are on the front lines. Second is, can we really deepen our own, like as a team or as a group, our understanding of some of these complex issues. Like for instance, we tried to become part of gatherings and groups that were like against CAA or against completely, like who were opposing, and some of them who were like trying to really reclaim, like who see BJP and RSS as reactionary forces, that's coming up right now in the general journey of reclaiming what it means to be Hindu, or general journey of even decolonizing. So we've tried to kind of engage with different people, try to reach out to people who feel affected by these. However, I think it's again related to privilege. Like how do we reach out to people who are not economically privileged, like to create inner journey spaces? We're trying some learnings there. However, I think we need way more like capacity within us, and also some more people with that kind of context that we're trying to build right now. So we're in the building stage, I would say, to some of these things. And our work right now is to not get swayed away with those waves. At least that's also one of the work. Because if we get swayed away, we'll lose the, something that we've built, as in terms of the community based on this we've built. Yeah, I hope I got something. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that a lot of our alumni has been working on the front line in the pandemic especially, and like our hope and our intention was to like support them, to hold them, like care for the carers. So I think like we found ourselves to be playing that role, and also to be able to step back and really reflect when a lot of frontline work was also needed. So like Shashank was saying, we're still figuring out and learning more, but we felt like that was the role that we took upon ourselves during the pandemic and the lockdown. And about the elders, it's been interesting that in Youth Alliance, like what our age group is, and Sujata ji also asked, like presently we're mostly between 22 and 28, like that's the age group of people who work in the team. And the eldest member we had, like Prakhar, who founded the organization, was a few years older to us, like about 5 years older. So in the most urgent and most immediate working, we haven't worked with elders for so long, but like when we engage with our mentors, my personal experience has been that it's taken me years to develop a deep relationship with a mentor or an elder, for me to even challenge them in a good way. And when I've been able to do that, and when I've reached a stage of that relationship with them, is when I've felt the most alive and most expressed in my relationship. Otherwise, most of the times, like I think we recently came across this awareness that like culturally, like maybe like what I believe is that culturally I have an inhibition around elders. Like I feel like I don't have enough experience. I don't think I'm making sense. So like when I've been able to overcome that and develop a relationship, that's been when I've been most expressed. And it's taken years sometimes with some elders.
Also, like Vibhuti shared, we have like a younger team, and just the idea of having no designations but floating roles within the team help us be detached with certain experiences or how a certain program should be. Like it really supports that, where processes are transferred from one team member to another at various intervals, and just it kind of builds that channel of in kind of doing a process from from a new lens when a new person picks it up in their own way. Also, we are building our our process for feedback to each other is, I also believe, is quite open, where like a safer space for even a younger team member is created to share with a team member who has worked for certain years that probably this is a challenge I felt with you, which isn't a blame but a common experience that they shared. So that supports the process also.
Thank you, Srishti, for the question. Sabu is here. Welcome, Sabu. Sabu's question is related to governing board. Wondering if you have a governing board, what's their role? How much are they involved with the operations? What the organization is doing? And for founders/founders, also how much are they involved? So we did have Prakhar, like Vibhuti shared, was a founder who transitioned out, I think 2.5 years ago or so. Governing board, I think in terms of the legal governing board, we do have one. However, it's pretty informal in terms of it doesn't hold a lot of, like, legally it does, but in terms of regular operation and practices, it doesn't hold a lot of decision making power or sanctioning a lot of operational things. We're not, I would say that we need to get better at some of the legal aspects of it, like getting, like typically 1 or 2 members of the board are would sign the audited accounts. We need to get better to get everybody's consent on that. Also, it's also because historically all of them have been friends of Prakhar and some of us, and they have continued to be friends more than board members. So we are yet to, like there has been an industry push to get board members who are highly connected and who can get us funding, etc., which we didn't want to create very strong, but we do want to have a board which is like in terms of it can be a good feedback or a good external stakeholder kind of connection that they might hold a part of. However, it's like with the board and within the team, it's clear that like people who are directly involved, who are alive with something that we are trying to build, they are the people who shall have the, like, no matter what the legal aspects are, but they would be like the people who will take and drive stuff. Similar is the case with Prakhar. Like Prakhar has been very gracious in transitioning out, and Tejal also, who recently transitioned out. Both of them were, like Vibhuti said, 5-6 years elder to us. Both of them have been very gracious to transition and give it, like, let go of a lot of attachments and make available their social capital even as we do the work, particularly with respect to funding in case of Prakhar, and for Tejal to be like her ability to listen, and she still is available for us for listening sessions or one-on-one check-ins. So like we've been nourished by that culture of transitioning out gracefully. So that's how found, like, although they're involved in different capacities and different times of the year, they're more or less involved. But I think we've been enriched by transitioning out graciously as a culture. The second question is a challenge sometimes for me.
I wanted to clarify on that, whether this culture was even there and when the founders were in the operational team.
So it's been there somewhat. However, I think with transition, like for 1.5 years, we were like, really, how do we really understand how to make people like transition out of the organization? That was one of the questions we asked. And I think it's only when Tejal transitioned out in March, we're like, yeah, now we're knowing how to enable, like, because exits are not easy in any organization typically. And we have had people who have left us, like people who have stayed longer, it's been very nice. But people who have left within a year, it's been like sometimes people have really left feeling unworthy, that they couldn't do enough for the organization, or people have left because of personal reasons like family, health, or other reasons like that. And it wasn't like a very nice exit in that way, like in terms of grace and in terms of harmonious. Although there were no conflicts and like that, those kinds of conflict, but I would say that the full fruit of transition wasn't harvested. But I think this year we have 2 people transition out in June again, like they'll be transitioning out, and we've been very openly having those conversation about conflict of interest, conversations about money, conversation about support beyond, when they transition out. Like one of our team members, Priyanka, who's transitioning out, who worked for us 2 years in Kanpur villages. She's going back to her village in Sitamarhi, and she wants to run for local elections, panchayat elections in Sitamarhi in 2021. So she's transitioning out. We're happy that she's transitioning out, and she's happy, and we're supporting her in that. So it's like that. Although there are edges, edges of expectations that show up still. I mean, I don't mean to sound that it's all figured out, but yeah, still I would say that to some extent transitions is because we held it as a conscious question. It's being engaged with. Thank you for the question. A challenge. The other question Sabu said was the challenge is to have a balance between action and reflection. Working in system with humans involves working a lot on like feelings, mood swings, challenges, etc. How do you work with things like when a team member is going through difficulty? Yeah, thank you, Sabu. Thank you, Sangeeta, for complimenting. Do Vibhuti, Anisha, do you want to respond to Sabu's question?
I think one thing that supports this process of how a person is feeling while doing this kind of work is like one is I use the term human-centric processes, where we do value the cause, but we value the person more, and the person has the space to either reach out to any team member or share in the circle that this is what is going on with them, and also they have the liberty to be able to share that right now I can work and I cannot work. That sets like a very clear expectation in between the team members that this is what the person is responsible for or what their role is, and this is what is going on with them right now. I think second is that it's a general sense making of a person also, where where there is a open culture. We have a process called Tuesday calls at Youth Alliance, where we come together and for 1.5 to 2 hours, and like a personal check-in is done with all the team members, and we talk about work. So that also gives us a sense what a person is going through, even if a person is not able to kind of share it out explicitly, and within us we kind of take role of checking in that with team member individually, that again that supports the process what that person is holding. And also I think there's a lot of culture of self accountability, where even before a person anybody else from the team reaches out to the person saying that this hasn't been done or you picked up this, but a person themselves share that it's difficult for me right now, or I got late in doing this, where again there's no blame but acknowledgement of how things are, like that's, I feel that's a part of how this process is supported, and like of course like Shashank Vibhuti can add to it.
Thank you, Anisha. Thank you, Sabu. Nikhil has a comment and question. We'll maybe this may be the last. If there are any other questions, please add on the chat. It would act for our reflection as well. And then we'll also, it's about 8 minutes to 5:30. To put rather simply, would you say that YA is about creating a collective meditative space, which is about slowing down, listening to each other, empathy, recognizing our conditioning, something like Vipassana, but put in day-to-day practice life with others? I think that's a great description, Nikhil. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Okay. So Shashank shared that. I was wondering if Ashok Da would like to, he had made few comments, so if you would like to speak briefly, few points, and then we could move towards the closure of this meeting.
अशोक आपका माइक बंद है.
Can you unmute? It's very. I don't want to. I don't want to say anything. I was just listening. I was very interested to see all of how you were thinking, and my reaction is that it's a very, very encouraging group. It seems to be. Likes to the photograph as well. I'd love to meet all of you, but I don't know how, because we're not supposed to go out. We are all 70 plus. So I don't know when we'll be free. But love to see. I sent some comments spontaneously. I don't think we should ask questions to you. You should ask questions to us. We had enough, so we have no right to ask you any questions. I believe, very strongly believe, that always the elder has to learn from the young. Because you come with new ideas, with no prejudice. More you get older, you get prejudiced, biased, and all vested interest reacts on you. Young people are coming with free idea, and they have more. At your age, we didn't have so much information. We didn't have such information. You have more information, and you should guide us. See that the Buddhas are only they're cynicals. They can't inspire anybody. Youth is inspiration. Ashish, me, all of us I'm still surviving, active I am, because of my experience of youth. I still live in that dream, what they call nostalgia. That keeps me or my generation to think positively. Otherwise, what we're saying now, it has nothing positive to think about. But I would not suggest you to look negatively. Be positive. Because everything has a nothing is final. Nothing is ultimate. Things will change. Things changes. So I was very impressed by, and most of the time I spent very little time with my contemporaries. I spent time with younger people, especially in the community, not in the middle class. But I have some good young people in Delhi and other places where I meet them regularly, and I always tell them to ask, because otherwise, if you don't ask, will not our rationality will finish. And I understand you also need us, because our experience, certain part of our experience will be always helpful to you, and that we are very much ready to part with. Because fortunately we grew in an age where things were much more different, very positive. I was in college in the late 60s and early 70s. Things were very positive. Unfortunately, you are living in a very different age. A lot of destruction, that patriarchy as it was formed. But in our time, I remember now, we lived in a time when Vietnam was going on, Vietnam Liberation War. A small country fighting with the world power US, and they defeated US in 1969, then finally in 75. Today you cannot think this is possible. Nobody will believe that. We had the man landing on moon in the same year, and that was a tremendous watershed in thinking. Today, it may not be very special thing, man landing on moon, but in 1969, it was a very important event. Similarly, there are intellectuals in this country who would speak openly. But during emergency, we saw that middle class got डर गया, जिसको बोलते हैं ना. आप लोग हिंदी समझते हैं ना सभी को.
जी.
इमरजेंसी में हमने देखा कैसे पढ़े लिखे लोग डर जाते हैं. जो आप देख रहे हैं, हम लोगों को, आप लोगों को दिख रहा है, और जरूर आप लोगों को पूछना चाहिए क्यों मैं बोल रहे हैं भाई. सबको सही बात करने का गारंटी है क्या? किसी ने कोई लाइसेंस रखा है? गलत बात ही बोलेंगे. बोलना तो चाहिए. अगर नौजवान सवाल नहीं करेगा तो कौन करेगा? अभी उसमें कमेंट कर रहा था, देखने सही गलत, आपको एक स्टैंड तो लेना, आप लेते हैं, देखिए. और नौजवानी की सबसे अच्छी बात जो है, अभी मैं तस्वूर करता हूँ दिमाग में, कि ये जो अनसर्टेनिटी में जीना जो मजा है ना, सब कुछ तय नहीं होना चाहिए. वो जो बुढ़े हो जाते जो सब कुछ तय करके करें, ये जो मजा है, जो जिसको ये लोग बोलते हैं रोमांटिसिज्म, हम लोग जब बड़े हुए थे ना, एकदम आप लोग भी लेते होंगे, चे गुएवारा था ना, उसकी जो इमेज था दुनिया में, और आज भी कई प्रेजेंट जनरेशन तक है, कि वो इम्पॉसिबल की तरफ भागते थे.
Okay, Ashok, so sorry to cut you short, but
sorry.
We are.
आप लोगों से मैं बहुत encouraged हूँ, बहुत inspired हूँ, और होते रहूँगा. आप लोग बड़ा मेहरबानी हम लोगों को गाइड कीजिए.
नहीं, as you shared, right, ये हमारा एक्चुअली प्रिविलेज है टू बी एबल टू बिल्ड दिस वर्ल्ड ऑन टॉप ऑफ योर शोल्डर. मतलब जो भी हम कर पा रहे हैं वो आपके ब्लेसिंग्स एंड आपके एफर्ट्स पर ही है. So now I think we have like come to the end of the session, which is right now it's 5:30. हमने मतलब इससे पहले वाले हमारे वार्ताज 1.5 hour के हुआ करते थे, and then we thought कि every वार्ता extends and becomes a 2 hour, so we thought कि let's make it 2 hour already. और जब हमने उसको 2 hour बनाया तो now that also we have exceeded.
एक ही रिक्वेस्ट है, आप लोग हमारे जहाँ पर हमें एक यूनियन से, फॉरेस्ट वर्कर्स यूनियन से, आप लोग उसमें एरिया में आ सकते, मैं देख रहा था, आप लोग वहाँ लोगों से बात कर सकते हैं. हमारे यूनियन में वुमेन लीडरशिप है, कलेक्टिव लीडरशिप है, और वे द फर्स्ट यूनियन. आप आइए,
मेल आईडी डाल दीजिए चैट बॉक्स में.
आशीष को मालूम है, आशीष को मालूम है.
भेज दूंगा.
Sure. Yes. So, so as I was mentioning, I think we are right now half of the people who left. That's okay. So just to conclude the session, it was great sharing, a very intimate and vulnerable sharing by you guys. Really appreciate it. As a young person myself, I also get highly motivated by your thoughts, your ideas, and your work. So with that, just one small announcement which Ashish also sent in the chat box, which is that the next Vartas we'll have on Saturday. It will be at 3 p.m. We will see if it's going to be 1.5 hour or 2 hour. It'll be with Stan from Just Change. We will talk about governance, a different model of economics, and different ideas. So, and we'll share the mail about that in few days as well. So with that, I'll invite all of you guys to switch on your videos if you'd like, and just say goodbye.
Also, I wanted to say thank you so much to the entire Vikalp Varta and Vikalp Sangam team for giving us this opportunity to share. I think we've been learning a lot in the past 2 years. We didn't know about Vikalp Sangam, I think, before two years ago or 2.5 years ago. We've been learning a lot from some of the experiences and general books. We've been reading a lot of books that Ashish Ji, Sujata have written, and it's been it's been adding to our perspectives quite a bit. Thank you for that, for the opportunity, and we hope to keep learning. And also, we had shared as in the beginning that we'd do a small group, but I think it was flowing with questions very intensely, so we didn't interrupt that flow. So hopefully at another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, team. It was really wonderful.
Milenge jaldi.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.